Most people think the future is scary because of technology, because of money, because of uncertainty. But the truth is, the future feels heavy because our minds are already tired. Not tired from work, not tired from effort, but tired from constant pressure to be ready, to be better, to not fall behind. Every day you wake up, and before you even start your day, your mind is already running. What if I fail? What if I choose the wrong path? What if I'm not good enough? What if everyone else moves faster than me? You may not say these thoughts out loud, but they live quietly inside you. And over time, they shape how you see the future. The future stops feeling like a place of possibility and slowly becomes a place of anxiety. This is not because you are weak. This is not because you lack discipline. It is because no one taught you how to build mental strength for a long future. We were taught how to work harder, how to be productive, how to chase goals. But we were never taught how to stay mentally stable while the world keeps changing, and the future will not slow down for anyone. Technology will evolve. Jobs will change. Skills will expire. Trends will come and go. If your mind is not strong, every change feels like a threat. You don't feel excited. You feel exhausted before you even begin. Many people think mental strength means being confident all the time, but real mental strength is much quieter than that. It is the ability to stay calm when you don't know the answer yet, to stay grounded when the path is unclear, to stay kind to yourself when progress feels slow. And here is something important. Mental strength is not built in big moments. It is built in small, almost invisible habits repeated every day. The problem is most people are building habits that weaken their mental strength without realizing it. Every time you rush your thoughts, every time you judge yourself harshly, every time you compare your pace with others, your mind learns one thing: the future is dangerous, I must stay tense. Over time, this tension becomes normal. You wake up tired even after sleeping. You feel pressure even when nothing bad is happening. This is what mental exhaustion looks like. Not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet heaviness that follows you into the future. But here is the good news. Mental strength does not require changing your whole life or becoming someone else. It begins with one small habit that slowly changes how your mind responds to uncertainty. This habit does not remove fear. It does not make the future predictable, but yes, it changes your relationship with uncertainty. Instead of fighting the unknown, you learn how to sit with it. Instead of panicking about what comes next, you learn how to stay present while preparing gently. Most people never learn this skill. They are always either escaping the present or worrying about the future. But mentally strong people live in a different rhythm. They prepare for the future without abandoning the present. They move forward without rushing themselves. They trust their ability to adapt, even when they don't have all the answers. And this trust is not something you are born with. It is built through a small habit done quietly every day. In the next part, we will explore what this habit actually is. Not in a dramatic way, not in a motivational way, but in a realistic, human, sustainable way. A habit you can keep even on tired days, even when life feels unclear. For now, just notice this. If the future feels heavy, it is not because you are failing. It is because your mind has been carrying uncertainty alone for too long, and that can change gently, one habit at a time. There is a habit that most people practice every single day. They don't plan it. They don't choose it consciously, but it quietly shapes how strong or fragile their mind becomes over the years. This habit is not about productivity. It is not about discipline. It is not about positive thinking. It is much simpler and much more powerful than that. It is the habit of how you respond to your own thoughts, not what thoughts you have, but how you treat them when they appear. Most people believe they are controlled by their thoughts. If a thought appears, it must be true. It must be urgent. It must be acted on. Yet immediately, this belief slowly weakens the mind because the human mind never stops producing thoughts. Some are useful, some are neutral, some are completely unnecessary. But when you react to all of them as if they matter equally, your mental energy gets drained. Imagine living in a house where every sound demands your attention. Every small noise, every movement, every echo, you would never feel at rest. This is how many people live inside their own minds. Every thought becomes a command. Every worry becomes a signal. Every doubt becomes a verdict. Over time, this creates a constant state of tension. The invisible habit that mentally strong people develop is different. They learn how to pause between a thought and their reaction to it. This pause is not dramatic. It lasts only a few seconds, but it changes everything. In that pause, they do not fight the thought. They do not judge it. They do not try to replace it with a positive one. They simply notice it. This simple act of noticing is what builds mental strength. Because when you notice a thought instead of immediately believing it, you create distance. And distance creates choice. Without this habit, your mind feels like a crowded room where everyone is talking at once. With this habit, your mind becomes quieter, not because there are fewer thoughts, but because fewer thoughts control you. Most people confuse mental strength with having fewer negative thoughts. But mentally strong people still have doubts, still have fears, still have moments of insecurity. The difference is, they don't panic when these thoughts appear. They don't rush to fix them. They don't argue with them. They don't let them define the future. They allow the thought to exist without turning it into a story. And this is where most mental exhaustion comes from. Not from the thought itself, but from the story you build around it. One thought appears, I might fail. And immediately the mind adds, if I fail, everything will collapse. People will judge me. I will never recover. The original thought was small, but the story becomes heavy. The invisible habit is learning to stop at the first sentence, I might fail, and staying there without adding more. This does not make you passive. It makes you stable, because now you can respond from clarity instead of fear. This habit takes time because it goes against how we were conditioned. From a young age, we were taught to react quickly, to answer immediately, to explain ourselves, to justify our emotions, to correct our thoughts. We were rarely taught how to sit quietly with uncertainty. So when uncertainty appears, the mind tries to escape it by creating noise, plans, worries, predictions, comparisons. But mentally strong people are not afraid of uncertainty. They understand something. Important uncertainty is not a problem. It is the natural state of the future. The future has always been uncertain. Even when it felt stable, the difference now is that change is faster and more visible. If your mind reacts to uncertainty as a threat, you will always feel behind. But if your mind learns to coexist with uncertainty, you gain resilience. This is why the habit is invisible. From the outside, nothing looks impressive. You are not doing more. You are not pushing harder. You are not speaking louder. But inside, you are building space. Space between stimulus and response. Space between thought and belief. Space between fear and action. This space is where mental strength lives, and it is built moment by moment through small choices. When a worrying thought appears, you choose not to follow it immediately. When comparison shows up, you notice it without letting it decide your worth. When impatience arises, you allow it without rushing your next step. These choices seem small, but they accumulate, just like weak habits accumulate into exhaustion. Strong mental habits accumulate into calm confidence. Many people ask, how long does it take to become mentally strong? This question already misses the point. Mental strength is not a destination, it is a way of relating to your inner experience. Some days you will respond skillfully, some days you will react automatically. Both are part of the process. The habit is not about perfection, it is about awareness. Every time you notice that you reacted unconsciously and gently, return to noticing you are strengthening your mind. This is why mentally strong people are often gentle with themselves. They don't add self-criticism on top. Nine of difficulty. They understand that the mind learns best in an environment of safety. Pressure may create short bursts of change, but safety creates long-term strength, and safety begins inside, by becoming a place where your thoughts are allowed to come and go without punishment. This does not mean you ignore responsibility or avoid challenges. It means you face challenges without internal violence. The future will test you in ways you cannot predict. Skills may become irrelevant. Plans may fail. Paths may disappear. But if your mind knows how to stay present when things are unclear, you will adapt. Not because you are fearless, but because you are flexible. In the next part, we will explore how this habit protects you from fear, pressure, and constant change, how it becomes a quiet anchor when everything around you moves fast, and how you can strengthen it without adding another task to your life or another expectation to your already full days. When people talk about fear, they often imagine something dramatic, a big moment, a sudden crisis, a clear danger. But the fear that slowly weakens the mind is rarely loud, it is quiet, persistent, always present in the background. It shows up as tension, as restlessness, as the feeling that you are never fully safe, even when nothing bad is happening. This kind of fear does not come from danger, it comes from uncertainty. And in a fast-changing world, uncertainty is everywhere. You don't know if your skills will still matter, if your choices are the right ones, if the effort you are making will pay off. The mind does not like open endings, so it tries to protect you by creating pressure. Pressure to decide quickly, pressure to be sure, pressure to stay ahead, pressure to not fall behind. At first, this pressure feels useful. It feels like motivation. It feels like responsibility. It feels like ambition. But over time, pressure becomes exhausting because pressure is not sustainable. Pressure is a short-term strategy, and this is where the habit you are building quietly protects you. Not by removing fear, but by changing how fear lives inside you. Without this habit, fear feels urgent. It demands immediate action, immediate answers, immediate certainty. With this habit, fear becomes information, something to notice, something to listen to, but not something that controls your behavior. This difference is subtle but powerful. Imagine fear as a signal rather than a command. A signal. Each can be acknowledged. A command must be obeyed. Most people obey fear without realizing it. They rush decisions. They avoid risks. They overprepare. They underrest. They confuse movement with progress. But mentally strong people treat fear differently. They allow fear to exist without letting it set the pace. This is not because they are braver. It is because they are more present. Presence creates stability, and stability creates clarity. When your mind is constantly pulled into the future, clarity disappears. You start reacting to imagined outcomes rather than real situations. The habit of noticing thoughts and creating space around them brings you back to what is actually happening right now. And from this place, fear loses its sharp edge. It is still there, but it no longer overwhelms. Pressure works the same way. Pressure is the mind's attempt to control the future. If I push harder, if I hurry, if I don't slow down, maybe I can avoid disappointment. But the future does not respond well to pressure. Pressure narrows perception. It limits creativity. It reduces flexibility. Under pressure, you stop seeing options. You move faster, but you see less. This is dangerous in a changing world because adaptation requires openness, not tension. The habit you are practicing creates internal openness, not by relaxing all the time, but by reducing unnecessary resistance. Resistance to uncertainty, resistance to discomfort, resistance to not knowing. Every time you notice a thought without immediately reacting, you are training your nervous system to tolerate uncertainty. This is a skill. And like any skill, it strengthens with repetition. Over time, your body learns that uncertainty is survivable, that you don't need to panic every time the path is unclear. This is how mental strength becomes embodied, not just understood intellectually, but felt physically. Your breathing becomes steadier, your shoulders relax, your thoughts slow down. Not because life is easier, but because you are no longer fighting reality. Constant change is the third challenge. This habit protects you from change is exhausting when you are attached to how things used to be, when your sense of safety depends on stability. In the past, change happened slowly. You could build an identity around a role, a skill, a plan. Now change is continuous, and if your identity is rigid, change feels like a threat to who you are. This creates deep insecurity, not just about the future, but about the self. Who am I if my role changes, if my skills lose value, if my plans don't work? The habit of noticing thoughts helps here in a very quiet way. It loosens identification. You begin to see that you are not your thoughts, not your roles, not your plans. You are the awareness that experiences them. This realization is not philosophical, it is practical. Because when change happens, you don't collapse with it. You adapt, you reorient, you learn mentally. Strong people do not resist change internally. They feel sadness, they feel disappointment, they feel fear. But they don't add a second layer of suffering by telling themselves, this should not be happening. They accept the movement of life without surrendering their agency. This balance is what allows long-term resilience. Without it, change feels like loss again and again. With it, change becomes information, something to respond to rather than something to knock on. Fear. This habit also protects your energy. Fear, pressure, and constant change consume mental energy, not because they exist, but because of how much attention they demand. Attention is a limited resource. If most of your attention is spent worrying, anticipating, controlling, there is little left for learning, creating, connecting. Mentally strong people guard their attention carefully, not by avoiding reality, but by choosing what deserves engagement. Not every thought deserves discussion. Not every fear deserves a plan. Not every uncertainty deserves an answer. This discernment comes from the habit you are building. It teaches you how to stay centered while the world moves around you. This does not make you passive. It makes you responsive. Responsive means you can meet change without losing yourself. Fear still shows up. Pressure still appears. Change still happens. But they no longer define your inner state. Your inner state becomes a place of reference rather than a battlefield. From this place, you can think more clearly. You can make decisions without rushing. You can prepare for the future without sacrificing the present. This is why mental strength is so important for the future. The future does not require constant certainty. It requires adaptability, emotional regulation, and self-trust. And self-trust is built when you see that you can handle uncertainty without breaking. Every time you notice a thought instead of obeying it, you prove this to yourself. Quietly, consistently, without drama. In the next part, we will explore something surprising: why mentally strong people do not rely on motivation, why motivation often fails in the long run, and what replaces it when your mind becomes stable enough to move forward without force. Motivation is often misunderstood. Many people believe that motivation is the fuel that keeps life moving forward. They think if they can stay motivated, they will stay consistent, productive, and strong. But this belief quietly sets people up for exhaustion because motivation is not stable. It rises and it falls. It responds to emotions, to energy levels, to circumstances. And the future will not always provide the conditions that motivation needs. Mentally strong people understand this early. They don't wait to feel motivated before they move. They also don't blame themselves when motivation disappears. They see motivation for what it really is: a temporary emotional state, not a reliable foundation. If your progress depends on motivation, your future becomes fragile because motivation disappears precisely when life becomes difficult, when results are slow, when uncertainty increases, when effort feels invisible. This is when most people stop. Not because they are incapable, but because their system was built on motivation. Mentally strong people build a different system, a system based on steadiness rather than intensity. They understand that the future is shaped by what you can continue doing, even on ordinary days, even on tired days, even on unclear days. This is where the habit you are building becomes essential. The habit of noticing thoughts and creating space changes your relationship with effort. Without this habit, effort feels heavy. Every action comes with internal resistance. You have to push yourself, argue with yourself, convince yourself. This creates internal friction. Over time, this friction becomes fatigue. With this habit, effort feels quieter. You don't need to convince yourself. You don't need to wait for the perfect emotional state. You act because action is appropriate, not because you feel inspired. This is a subtle shift, but a powerful one. Mentally strong people do not ask, "Do I feel like doing this?" They ask, "Is this the next reasonable step?" Reasonable steps are easier to repeat. They do not require emotional peaks. They do not demand urgency. They fit into life rather than fighting it. This is why motivation is replaced by rhythm. Rhythm is sustainable rhythm. respects energy, attention, and recovery. Motivation ignores these things. It demands intensity without considering cost. In the short term, motivation can create impressive results. In the long term, it often leads to burnout. The future does not reward short bursts of each intensity. It rewards consistency, adaptability, and patience. Mentally strong people do not romanticize struggle. They don't believe that everything meaningful must feel hard. They understand that unnecessary struggle is often a sign of a poorly designed system. The habit of awareness allows them to see where effort is being wasted, where they are pushing when they could be adjusting, where they are forcing when they could be aligning. This awareness is not passive, it is deeply practical. It helps you decide when to move and when to rest, when to persist and when to reconsider. Motivation does not help with this because motivation always says, do more. Awareness asks, what actually helps? Another reason mentally strong people don't rely on motivation is identity. Motivation is tied to how you see yourself. When motivation is high, you feel capable, disciplined, confident. When motivation is low, you feel weak, lazy, behind. This creates emotional instability. Your sense of self rises and falls with your energy. Mentally strong people separate identity from emotional states. They don't define themselves by how motivated they feel. They define themselves by values and direction. Values are quieter than motivation, but far more stable. You may not feel excited about acting on your values every day, but you can still act because values do not depend on mood. This is how long-term direction is maintained. The habit of noticing thoughts helps you see when motivation is speaking and when values are speaking. Motivation says, do it now or you are failing. Values say, move when it makes sense. Motivation demands speed. Values allow patience. Motivation creates pressure. Values create clarity. This difference matters deeply in an unstable future. The future will require you to learn new skills, let go of old ones, start again more than once. Motivation cannot carry you through repeated transitions. It burns out, but a value-based rhythm can adapt because it is not attached to outcomes or timelines. It is attached to direction. Mentally strong people trust direction more than momentum. They know momentum fades, direction remains. The habit you are building strengthens this trust. By reducing internal noise, you can hear what actually matters to you, not what is urgent, not what is impressive, not what others expect, but what aligns with who you want to become over time. This clarity makes motivation less necessary. You no longer need to convince yourself with excitement or pressure. You move because the movement makes sense. This creates a calm persistence, a persistence that does not shout, that does not rush, that does not collapse when things slow down. This is the kind of persistence the future requires. In the next and final part, we will bring everything together. How to live with this habit day by day without turning it into another rule, another obligation, another source of pressure. How to stay mentally strong in a fast, uncertain, and demanding world without losing your softness or your humanity. At some point, every habit either becomes part of your life or becomes another burden. This is why the final and most important question is not, how powerful is this habit, but, can I live with it without forcing myself? Because the future will not ask you to be perfect. It will ask you to be flexible again and again. The habit you are building was a never meant to turn you into a calm machine or a detached observer. It was meant to help you stay human in a world that constantly pushes you to harden. Living with this habit means allowing it to blend into ordinary moments. Not special moments, not quiet retreats, not ideal conditions, but real life. Busy mornings, unclear days, tired evenings, unexpected changes. This is where mental strength actually matters. Most people abandon habits because they try to practice them in perfect conditions. They wait for silence, for time, for motivation. But the habit you are learning does not require any of that. It requires only one thing: honest attention, not intense attention, not disciplined attention, just honest attention. Living with this habit means noticing what is already happening inside you. When tension appears, you notice it. When fear shows up, you notice it. When impatience arises, you notice it. You don't try to correct it immediately. You don't turn it into a lesson. You don't judge yourself for feeling it. You simply allow it to exist without turning it into an emergency. This is how the habit stays light. The moment you try to do it right, it becomes heavy. Mental strength is not built by control. It is built by relationship. A relationship with your thoughts, your emotions, your uncertainty. And relationships grow through consistency, not intensity. Some days you will notice your thoughts early. Some days you will notice them late. Some days you will forget completely. All of this is part of the process. The habit is not broken because you forgot. It resumes the moment you remember. This is a crucial shift. Instead of thinking, I failed today, you learn to think, I am noticing again. This keeps the habit alive without pressure. Living with this habit also means accepting that mental strength does not remove pain. You will still feel disappointment, loss, and sadness. The difference is you will no longer add panic on top of pain. Pain becomes something you experience, not something you drown in. This distinction protects your future self, because the future will include moments that challenge your identity. You may outgrow roles, you may leave paths behind, you may start again later than you expected. Without mental strength, these moments feel like failure. With mental strength, they feel like transitions, difficult but navigable. This habit allows you to grieve without collapsing, to let go without losing direction, to pause without losing trust. Trust is the quiet outcome of this practice. Not blind. Optimism, not forced confidence, but trust in your capacity to respond rather than react. Trust that you can face uncertainty without becoming rigid. Trust that you can move forward without knowing everything. This kind of trust cannot be rushed. It grows slowly as you watch yourself handle small moments with more presence. You notice that you don't fall apart as easily. You notice that your thoughts no longer scare you as much. You notice that silence feels safer. This is how the habit reshapes your inner environment. Not by changing the world, but by changing how the world lives inside you. Living with this habit also changes how you relate to time. The future stops feeling like something you must conquer. It becomes something you walk into, one step at a time. You stop measuring your worth by speed. You stop panicking about being behind you. Understand that life is not a race, but a direction, and direction can be steady even when pace changes. This understanding frees enormous mental energy, energy that was once spent on worry, comparison, and self-pressure. This energy returns to creativity, learning, and connection. These are the qualities that actually matter in the future. Not constant certainty, not endless hustle, but the ability to learn to adapt and to stay emotionally grounded. The habit you are building supports all of this quietly without demanding attention. It does not ask you to be different. It asks you to be present, and presence is enough. As you move forward with this habit, remember this. Mental strength is not about becoming unbreakable. It is about becoming flexible without losing your center. The future will test you, but it will also shape you if you meet it with awareness rather than resistance. You will not only survive it, you will grow in ways you could not have planned, and that growth will feel less like pressure and more like a natural unfolding. One moment, one thought, one gentle pause at a time.